And you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And this episode is brought to you by my sponsor, which is my own shirt right here, which is brand new, given that Gundam just dropped the trailer today. Pick that bad boy up on Redbubble. Links in the description up above. And I have with me currently Sam Quinton, who has successfully funded 47 Furious Tales, issue 3, and the artist edition of Volume 1. So before we get way ahead of ourselves here, let's sort of catch everybody up on what is 47 Furious Tales. I know that we spoke about it in the past, but some people are brand new. So what is the basic premise of the comic?
47 Furious Tales is the story of the 47 Ronin, straight out of Japan's history, told through anthropomorphic animal characters. So if you're a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Usagi Yojimbo, this is a media that's very comfortable for you. We actually took the historical events and tried to stitch them together over a 12-issue limited series and fill in the holes with the historical record with some artistic liberty to make sure that it fits nicely in a comic book narrative, and just telling the tale of these remarkable samurai who gave their lives in an effort of vengeance to avenge their lord. It's really a very touching tale.
Yeah, and obviously I'm a huge Japanese fan, and I love anime. I love things like Rurouni Kenshin and Vagabond. And obviously, a lot of people know 47 Furious Tales, but what prompted you to want to go down the anamorphic position and tell it that way? Because things like Cat Shit 1 have come out, things like Mouse are very
Mhm.
popular. And this is also a different interpretation that adds a spin to it, but also makes it different. And really, I think adds to the story because some people sort of get it differently
Mhm.
when it's done in an animal and done maybe in a little bit more of a cutesy way, even though there is some serious violence in this book.
Well, I don't think we'd call it a cutesy comic. We do have very graphic violence. It's very fitting for a samurai tale. So when you read 47 Furious Tales, you quickly identify the characters, and part of that is because we do have different anthropomorphic animals. So we've got samurai squirrels and foxes and hamsters. We've got bandit monkeys and corrupt shogunate officials who are depicted as rats and rabbits and all forms of different anthropomorphic animals. And this lends itself very well to help with immersion, with helping people more readily identify characters. And so when you get to reading through there and you see, okay, so this is clearly Asano Naganori, this is clearly Yoshio, this is clearly his son Chikara that you're told through the tale. And by using anthropomorphic animals, it helps to differentiate them very precisely so that you don't have a lot of similarities between characters. It's basically the same thing you see with superhero costumes being so different. And in that way, it acclimates the reader to who the characters are. And as the story progresses and unfolds, you learn more and more about them. It becomes easier to associate with them, just as you do with people when you see them. So yeah, it was a good choice to go with anthropomorphic animals, trying to
Because
portray everyone in
one of the
different more
things
than who they
that I
are.
think is very interesting, and sorry to cut you off, but one of the things that I think, and maybe it's just my opinion, but I also like when a comic does differentiate. Mouse has clearly, and the reason why I bring up Mouse is that it's similar in that style where you have different characters and then you automatically associate traits with certain characters, and that helps to convey what's going on.
Well,
Not everybody is
yeah,
familiar
but I
with
think also you have to watch out because when you can't rely too much on automatically associating those traits because you'll have different cultural associations um, between different societies around the planet. So I think that when you are doing that, you do definitely have to show through actions what those characters are like, just as you do in any other type of medium. But yeah, it does definitely help to bring a feel as to who's into what faction and what their viewpoints are in the story arc by having similar animal traits with characters who have a similar mindset.
Yeah, and obviously I kind of like it because it just connects instantly with me. And then obviously this is for all three issues. And issues one and two sort of, I feel, really set up the meat of this story, where
Mhm.
they're now going into what is known and what everybody is familiar with 47 Ronin and what
Mhm.
happens. And obviously they're dealing with the Great Bandits and Lord Asano sort of making his final way to Ito and dealing with the fallout and that what's going on. And this
Right.
episode, yeah, not episode, obviously I'm in anime land here, but this issue really kicks up that level of violence. And pardon
Yeah.
me, I'm a little bit sick, everybody. So,
No, I
excuse
mean
me.
we do refer to it by a battle name anyway. So I mean, when you're looking at, let me see if I can find more stuff. Please. Our promotional cards for these are pretty straightforward. So when you look at it, specifically, it's talking about the Battle of Furukawa. So there's no doubt for anyone who's been waiting on issue three. We woke up and chose violence for issue three. We really did. Um, and there's a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of horrors of war there implied through this, and a lot of people die. No spoilers. These guys have been dead for 300 years, but you get the idea.
Because obviously this is where I think this really gets interesting, because at this point now we're getting into the meat of the story. This is where the swords are starting to clash a lot more,
Mhm.
and we have the samurai of Akoto, and I think I got the name wrong, so
You
correct me if
did.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Asano Naganori, the samurai of Asano Naganori, Yoshio, and the rest of the folks
But
acting
but
on.
nonetheless, it's now getting to the point where the swords are clashing and people are dying, and really we're getting into the meat of this. And what is this like for you? Because this is what everybody I think wants in this story. This is the part that I'm interested in the
Well,
most.
this is the quarter mark of the series. 12 issues. We're finishing issue three here, and so this kind of brings to a head the first, I would say, almost subtle machinations of Kira against Asano. And as we reveal more of the underlying motivations behind that through the next three issues in particular, four, five, and six, I think that as much as things make sense already, there's going to be some elements that will harken back and like, oh wow, that SOB did this because of this. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm a bad guy. It was like, oh, he had a reason. And being able to have a good linear progression of the story where you know a great deal about what's going on, and then you're still able to reveal more through the course of it. It kind of ties everything more tightly together. Is a nice position to be in. Really, really glad to see issue three funded. Issue four will bring to Kickstarter later this year, and we're going to start a new tradition of successfully funding a 47 Furious Tales issue on the first try with issue four. All right,
Well,
so
let's talk about that, because this is what's so interesting to me, and this is Kickstarter strategy,
mhm.
Kickstarter, I guess, inside baseball. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold, everybody, so bear with me. Um,
Ladies and
but
gentlemen, he's actually, I think, just really hungover, but that's okay.
no, I'm like drinking my OJ. I drink all my OJ, guys. It's all good. So, this is something that I think is actually super fascinating. I actually think it's a lesson for a lot of creators, is that you have had three of 47 Furious Tales not fund, and
Correct.
then you came back.
Correct.
And what was that like? Because I think that's something that, and I ran a Kickstarter, and it took me 18 months to get over the hill because I was terrified of failing. And it sounds childish. It sounds, saying, oh, Andrew, if you fail, you could always come back. And I've heard that. But what was this like for you the first time it happened, and saying, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to improve the
I
Kickstarter?
told I told Alexia Veldhausen that we were going to make this series. I said that. Those words came out of my mouth. So failing to fund the first time because we weren't correctly prepared. I was still learning Kickstarter. Our goal was too high. Failing the second time, part of that was probably a little bit to do with the pandemic kicking off, honestly. But we still came back and got it done. And maybe the goal was still a little too high. The third time, that was a surprise. I didn't. Everyone I know was really surprised that we didn't fund on issue 3 the first time.
It was a
And
little weird.
so,
I thought you were going to fund. I really did. I thought this was the one. I thought it was a fair goal. I thought it was right where it should have been, and
yeah,
it was a little shocking.
yeah, the goal calculation was where it needed to be. We had really good traffic. We just didn't quite get there. We ended up falling about $1,100 or $1,200 short of goal on a $7,000 goal. It was just very, 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 very close. If we had had a longer campaign, we probably would have reached it. With this one, I basically applied every bit of personal finance from all the sales of all the product we've been doing, and just really put everything I could possibly put into it ahead of time to make sure that we got the goal down as low as we could. Got all the art prepaid for, all that done. And so it's literally just a matter of getting stuff printed and shipped. So pretty nice, pretty good position to be in, which I'm really happy for. And then just get it done. You know what I mean? But as far as what it was like, it was unfortunate the first time. It was very disappointing the second time, and the third time it was mind-boggling. For about 12 hours, and then Alexia and I shot another video where we told our backers we were going to come back in March, and we came back in March, and we funded in under an hour. So now, granted, our goal was tiny. We had a $500 goal at that point because all the
So
artists.
let's talk about that too,
Yeah.
because this goes back into strategy, and this
Mhm.
is something that I'm figuring out. And obviously, if I come back to Kickstarter, and correct me and stop me if I'm wrong at any point, sometimes you're in a situation where your goal has to be $2,000
Yes.
because that's what you need, and you have half the art done, but you got to the point where you are able to get 12 pages and you need the next 2,000 to get the next 12 pages and some printing done.
Mhm.
And so in that circumstance, I think you're stuck. But in other circumstances, if your comic is a little bit healthier, you're able to say, hey, I could have a $500 goal, which means that I'm going to get funded. And then I have the finances and another means to print the books, or make up a $300 difference out of my own personal finances, or I
Mhm.
could pay for the art ahead of time
Right.
outside of the Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter is covering printing, and it's sort of a
Mhm.
seed round. And I think that's sort of what happened with Furious Tales issue 3.
Well, we had a few things that went on there. We had, of course, some personal finances that improved significantly over the last year or so, and then some other things I won't bore you with that came to pass that made it possible. And we're able to get things out and get Alexia paid and make sure that we're taking good care of our artists. Because that's the thing too, is that when you are like me, dependent upon another person, depending upon an artist to get stuff done, and you need to get the Kickstarter funded so that you can pay them. That's a very difficult position, not just for you but for the artist, because usually they can't really divert their time to get the book done ahead of time if you're waiting to get paid at the end of the Kickstarter. This doesn't work because then you're talking about working for like a month without getting paid and waiting a month and a half, 2 months after that to get paid. So what you usually see is people will prepay for some pages ahead of time, for what they have within their budget, and then get their campaign launched. And as the campaign proceeds, especially if it funds early, you'll see that people are like, well, let's get this finished and get this done. But if you can get your funds up and get your capital moving in such a way that you can get everything done ahead of time, that makes a world of difference, because you can come to Kickstarter with the book complete and just literally fund your press run and shipping, like we did with Ring of Ages, for example, like we're doing with 47 Furious Tales, so that not only is it, hey, this campaign is done, we're gonna get this printed as soon as the art's done and the lettering's done, we're gonna get shipped. You can then turn around and come right back with another. Now, Brian Polito is a really great example about how to make this work. Because of course, he has a campaign on, the book's already done, the book's been done. While this campaign is running, he's finishing the completion of the book he's going to be putting on Kickstarter, say in May, right? And so as one book is being done, finished by one team, they're already working on the next one. And so you get a real nice cadence where you can release your books in a timely fashion. It shows the backers that you mean business. It shows that you're reliable, builds confidence in your brand, and it also helps to have a lot of help from supporting retailers. We had
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
yeah, that's a big point for me. That's made a huge difference.
So since we're on the topic, and obviously retailers matter, and
Yes.
this is something that you came up in another interview where you do this amazingly, and it was all fair. I was speaking to a few people and we were talking about retail distribution, and you do it amazingly because you have found the secret sauce, and it's
It's
another prime example.
That's
I
just it, though.
think
It's not a secret. It really isn't. It isn't a secret. I've been yelling it from the rooftops. Here, the secret sauce
I
isn't a
can't even
secret.
ask a question, Sam. You don't even let me ask the question and give you a compliment.
I'm getting a bad habit from you. Go on, finish the question, man. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to give you a compliment. That's really all I wanted to do.
Okay.
But because one of the things that I want to applaud you for, and I think a lot of creators can take this from you, and you're going to say it anyway, and you're going to say that you're yelling from the rooftop, and it's not really a secret, I guess, but it's the idea that you do a lot of reach out, and you do a lot of groundwork, and you actually put elbow grease into it, for lack of a better word. And I think that's where you call a retail shop. You crunch the numbers. You understand that you have to get your book down to a certain price, and then you have to make it work for the shop, and then you have to make it work for yourself. And also, I would imagine that if it's like a 3 cents difference, not to get into the whole business aspect of this, but you figure out how to make the numbers work so every party is happy. And then also,
Right.
it's not making the numbers work one time, it's making them work the next Kickstarter and the next Kickstarter. And then even after the Kickstarter is over, if they're selling 10 books of 47, in 3 months, they might need another 10 books. But guess what? You don't have a 47 Furious Tales Kickstarter going on, and then you're delivering those books to them. And so
Right.
that's something that I think a lot of creators need to learn how to pick up a phone and
So
call up a
I
email
was on the
shop.
phone with one of our retailers on Sunday. Okay. And this particular, well, actually, I was on the phone with a couple of the retailers because I follow up on the guys who I've shipped to make sure things are moving through, see what's going on, see if there's any feedback from the customers, stuff like that. Which you can do when you only have like 35 retail locations. Once you get more than that, it'll be harder. But right now I have 35. And so I was talking to this one retailer, and he was telling me that in his shop, 47 Furious Tales has actually outsold Reign of Ages, which makes sense because I shipped him more copies of 47 Furious Tales than Reign of Ages because he got issues 1 and 2. That having been said, he's almost sold out of both of those books, both of those series. So I think he said he had like 2 copies of Rayne left. He had, I think, 3 copies of 47 left, and that was it. 4 copies of 47, something like that. But the thing about that, well, that sounds like, okay, so he's got books left on the shelf. You're talking about someone who had a shipment that was $500 and something worth of retail, and he's got, what is that, $30 left on the shelf, and at good retail margins. So he made his money back and profited literally the day he put it on the shelf when it started selling. And we have another shop who has been carrying us for quite a long time. They had supported the Rayne campaign, and they got 40 copies of Rayne between the 3 different covers. 41 copies, actually. They put it out on the shelf, and they sold out. And so they put it out on Wednesday on New Comic Day, and on Saturday they said, "Hey man, I got like one copy left. I need to go ahead and put some more stuff in." And so on Monday I shipped them 40 more. Okay, and to sell 80 copies of an indie book to one shop, I feel really good about. You know, but
It's massively impressive. It really is.
but the thing is what feels really good about this is that I know that those shops are making money, because even though my margin on that is smaller than it would be if I was selling to you or to Tom, Dick, or Harry directly, the thing is that I'm making money on the shipment. I have a net profit on the shipment. It's smaller, like I said, a smaller margin, but it's a larger margin than I would make if I were selling those same number of books through a distributor, right? And the other thing about it is that when these shops are selling these books and they're making a solid profit on them, the nice part is that when I call them back, it's a much easier way to reach an agreement, because if I sell you new comics for $250 and you sell them for 500 in 2 weeks, I mean that $250 profit just covered your electric bill, and that's without touching any of your mainstream comics or other your primary stuff, and that's a big deal, especially for small shops. So um, I enjoy it. I like the fact that we get more eyes on what we're making. I like the fact that I actually got like a message from a guy on Twitter a few weeks ago, like the first week the 47th campaign was open. He's like, "Hey, I get this at my comic shop." I'm like, "Cool. What shop you got?" And he said, "I'm like, yeah, I ship to them directly." He's like, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "They're going to get stuff from this campaign." And it turned out actually they didn't. They just pre-ordered it because there was excuse me, sorry about that. There were some other things they wanted to put on there, and they didn't want to put it on the Kickstarter campaign. So we have a pre-order from them and pre-orders from several other stores actually. So, which is nice because we've got I think a total of 700 and I think 750 copies pre-ordered
And
outside of the
even
Kickstarter
so,
campaign.
yeah. So what I was going to also add is that obviously sometimes maybe somebody doesn't want to put something on a Kickstarter, and there's other arrangements, and we're not going to dive into too much into the
Well, I mean,
details.
I think usually they do. I think usually they do. I think the some of the ones this time, it was one of those things where, you know, sometimes people aren't comfortable being a retailer on Kickstarter because you then find that everyone is knocking on your door wanting you to back their campaigns too. And sometimes it's just hard to say no, you know. Um, and other times it's easy to say no, you know. But there's so many people out there who make such good products. Mike Shea, Madeline Holly Rawson, Larry, Max. These guys are putting in the hours. They're doing the work. Tom, just Sam Johnson, and then of course we've got who else can I name without getting too many people embarrassed? Raj Mahan, of course, with Mojo Rising, and then my buddy Joey, who's probably watching this, Joey Pineda, who puts out actually a lot of good content between Trouble's Back and all of his other work that he's been putting together lately. But these are guys who are into. I'm saying guys. There's also lots of ladies too producing fantastic work. Obviously, see Madeline Holly Rawson and so many others.
Yeah.
Christy Shen comes to mind. But getting the books into shops demands a lot of your time. And for me, it's hard sometimes because, single dad with my daughter here at the house and full-time job during the day, having to find time to write, coordinate teams, reach out to shops. I try to call at least 5 shops a day. And that's usually Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I usually call 25 shops a week. And it spreads it out long enough that by the time I get all the way back to the end of my list and start over again, I start over again, and I keep an eye out for new shops and try and get into new places that are just opening up. And when someone says no, they're not interested, I say, all right, cool. I'll give you a follow on your social media, and hopefully you'll see what we're doing and like it, and send them some digital stuff so that they can see precisely what it is that we're offering. And then just being persistent. And so I'd like to by the end of this year, I'd like to be at 100 locations carrying 47. Not counting the stuff that is distributed through Comics Mainstream. They've got several locations as well for me, which has been a fantastic relationship with Adam Watson, wonderful man. But I'd like to be at 100. I mean, I'll be happy if I'm at 50, but I'll be really happy if I'm at least at 100 shops. So for those of you who are watching, if your local shop does not carry Sunoco Publishing Comics, please have them reach out to me. They can find me on any major social media platform, and we will set them up and invoice them and get them an order out and have 47 on the shelves.
Because I find this to be fascinating because, not trying to make it about me, but I run an eBay business, and, I picked up some retail packages.
He's trying to make it about him.
No. And there goes our pre-interview conversation, everybody.
Dan Rather, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Rather.
Clearly, there goes our pre-interview conversation. Clearly.
The inside joke is we were talking a lot about interview stuff, and that's we try to give each other information that we've come across.
But the reason why I'm super curious about this and I find it fascinating, I think it's a great lesson, is that I think a lot of creators don't understand the shop side of the business, and I think you need to. And I think you need to understand that what creators are running is a business and a Kickstarter. And when you get your comics and you find out your book, and you need to understand that the shop has to pay for a building, electricity, water, and it also takes up space.
Well, Trash Gibb actually does a pretty good job keeping his books in local shops. Mike Shea is in Diamond, as is Madeline's Boston Metaphysical Society through the publishing company that she deals with. And so I think there are more and more people whose books are making it out there. I mean, certainly Madeline and Mike do vastly larger numbers than I do, as does Travis, of course. I think it's just that the weird thing is that my numbers are larger off of Kickstarter than they are on Kickstarter, because I don't make money on Kickstarter. I make cool things through Kickstarter. And usually I have as much of my own money or maybe even more than what the Kickstarter funds into it. And then it's on me to recoup that through subsequent sales. But I mean, without Kickstarter, we certainly couldn't do it because we'd have to have an even, much incrementally higher order base than we do now.
Yeah, it's the idea that I think that everybody has a different model on Kickstarter. I think there's three different models.
Oh, there's a different model for every different creator. Everyone's going to do it their own way. Even the Comics Tribes guys, even their models vary slightly from one campaign to the next, and they actually follow a really solid formula with slight deviations between creators. But I mean, everyone has a slightly different model. But I think,
and then there's also the off Kickstarter model, which is more of a traditional funnel model, which is a whole different ball game. And Kickstarter is a funnel. That's what it is at the end of the day. And there's things like ClickFunnels and I think Kabaj or Kajube or I forget it. And so you could run it off a Kickstarter, the exact same thing.
Yeah, I don't do anything with that stuff. I still need to finish building out the commercial website that we're looking for, but there's some features that I haven't figured out yet. But I'll tell you who's really good about online sales. Henri Compton. Henri Compton is absolutely fantastic at online sales. Larry Patrick Higgins, you may have heard of him. He creates Naomi.
Never heard of him.
Larry Patrick Higgins, and his eBay store just sings right along. Max DeVille and the commercial website for Atrocity Press. And there's so many others too that are doing it really well. I think that if you take and look and pay attention, you're going to see a lot of people doing a lot of things very, very well. And I think that all of us have little parts of our models that we need to polish up. And so, taking a moment to look at what other people are doing, trying to learn from that, I think is a big deal. I need to learn a lot about online sales. That's one thing I've been paying a lot of attention to lately over the last couple of years, trying to see how I want to put my site out and what I want. And in the meantime, I'm trying to build the relationships between shops that I can put as many things out there as possible. And I tell you, it's challenging. It's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it has me making comics.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating, and this is something that obviously you've come up not just in one conversation as doing this really well, and I think you're one of the guys to look up to in that relationship and building relationships with shops and just putting in the work because I think anybody can do it in comics if they want to. It's just a matter of do you want to put in the work and how much work do you want to put in, and that's
Well, I
what I
think
really.
one of the things that helps is actually having your product. And so the real heroes on this are the guys who are supporting us on Kickstarter and on Indiegogo, the guys and gals who are, trusting us with their money to bring the best products that we can to them. And so we focus like many of us you'll see. And again, I'm going to bring up some of the same names: Madeline Holly Rawson, Mike Shea, Larry Patrick Higgins, Max DeVille. Um, of course, Raj Mahan, people who, Sam Johnson. I can't believe I didn't mention Sam. Sam Johnson, definitely.
I know
These are
Keith Girl's great.
yeah these are folks who have put an emphasis on the quality of their product. A real, Travis Gibb, another good example. Tom Hutchins, guys who have put a tremendous focus on the quality of the product they're bringing to market, and they make sure that they do as much as they possibly can with the capital that is provided through their crowdfunding campaigns to make some really incredible work. Um, Honestly, you could stand up a lot of these guys against the best that any big company is putting out right now. And there's going to be a lot of times when the little guys here on Kickstarter are going to come out on top.
Hey,
And
hey, hey, hey! I don't think that's a fair fight to DC or Marvel.
well, I mean, I'm not saying everything, but I'll tell you, I would literally put Mary Machine Gun, Niobe, Boston Metaphysical Society, Miskatonic High, Cornrows by Brian Hawkins.
You
I
could
would
put
put
the App
that.
series by Tom.
Yeah,
Is
I would put those titles up against anything that Image or Marvel or DC puts out in
so
any given month. And I know that they're going to sell even with Batman alongside the next one. Yeah, people are still going to buy Batman,
yeah.
but they're going to
See,
pick up Mary Machine Gun. They're going to pick up
this is what I
Niobe.
think though, and this is my opinion on it. And I'm curious. I think the DC, Marvel, and Image with a bunch of books have taken their audience for granted. I think that they've become stale, and I think they've become lazy. And I think a bunch of their writing has become lazy, and even their creativity has become lazy. So I look at Kickstarter and indie comics, and this is why I think a Mary Machine Gun, and Niobe can smoke some of these titles because they're not lazy writing anymore.
See, I don't want to say that someone else is being lazy at their writing, and I definitely won't critique someone else's art since I can't draw at all. But what I think is very obvious is that we're seeing a decline in the popularity, especially among certain segments. And part of this is probably generational, um, because we've got comic fans who were, comic fans since they were kids in the 70s, 80s, 90s, who are now my age and older, or in their 40s, and um, you're seeing that the younger people who were coming into the market in their late teens and their 20s, they brought up on a entertainment diet of anime and titles that aren't necessarily available through comics. And another thing too is like you look at some of the successful media from DC and from Marvel with regard to their movies and their cartoons, and then go back and try and find something that correlates to the comics, you're not finding the same stories. Because in general, you're seeing these iconic stories, some of the best that's been done in the last 50 years, that are being handpicked to be produced into movie media. Because you really have to come with, you have to come fully loaded when you're going to sink hundreds of millions of dollars into a movie production. Um, Conversely, you look at something like Invincible, and how Invincible was such a huge success on Netflix, um, and just something that was a really good comic series that they could have done that level of animation really 15, 20 years ago easily, and even before then. But for whatever reason, it took this long to get Invincible made into animated series, and Netflix capitalized on that very well. I mean, not to point out like the real big glaring things, but just the availability of certain Invincible merchandise like T-shirts and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff moves through Amazon, and Amazon's going to get a piece of every single bit of it. Those viewable hours that people spent watching Invincible were hours they weren't watching stuff on HBO or Hulu or on
Yeah.
Netflix. And so they really, really snatched a lot of viewer time away from those major platforms. And the same is true with the Vox Machina series. I mean, you're talking years and years and years worth of watch time, probably decades or centuries worth of watch time, really, for Vox Machina, between millions of people watching it. I mean, think about that for a second. The collective time being used on that is such a huge, huge amount. It's hard to wrap your head around it. Um, and so there's certainly a way to leverage those properties with your comics, and Marvel and DC haven't taken advantage of their movies and their video games and their cartoons to coincide with comic sales. And so comics keep trudging along. And they don't get me wrong, some of the sales numbers are still above 100,000, especially for like Batman. Batman's itself is doing really well and has for years. But I mean, I talk to shop owners that I deal with where the only thing that they carry from Marvel or DC right now is on their pull list. And everything else on their shelves are indie comics, stuff from local people producing it. They're moving back stock and flipping particular issues. And then their other sales are through their collectible card games, their role playing games, their um, uh, Warhammer sets, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the other thing too is, of course, their manga section. They pick it up from Viz, or their kids and all ages section from Penguin Random House. And more of these shop owners are finding that they are getting the kids in for their all ages manga, for their all ages comics from Penguin Random House. And that's a big thing. Even like right now with Walmart has been now taking and putting, they have a kids line for Marvel products. They're aimed at smaller children. And then they put that, and then you have like kids T-shirts with Spider-Man on it and all that, so that it's kind of like a one spot to shop for your fandom, right? And that kind of model, I think, is going to go a long way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, I went into Target and they have like Batman t-shirts, Superman t-shirts, and you gotta walk and it's like right across from like the toy section, and it's clearly a big play in that fashion. So yeah, I just think that there's an issue of leverage. I know comic shops that legitimately, because of COVID, they have shifted their entire percentage of backstock because they move a lot of backstock, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's super fascinating. But I do want to get out of the entire inside baseball as much as I love it. I want to talk about your book and the rewards with your book and everything that's going on with, 47 Furious Tales and all that stuff. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on with it. And I know some of the tiers are already gone, like the big one. I'm getting a cool haiku from it. So I'm really excited to read
Well,
that.
not just that, but the dedication for the book comes with that. And we're doing that for issues 1 through 11. Book 12 will not have a daimyo reward associated with its Kickstarter campaign because we're going to use the as the dedication haiku, Asano Naganori's death haiku. And then for the dedication, well, I'll leave you guys until you have the book in hand about that. But
Because I love the concept of the daimyo, and hopefully I said it correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. Names are not my
that's a
thing.
good anglicized pronunciation. I don't pronounce it in the genuine Japanese myself. I'm terrible at it. But as far as anglicized pronunciation, daimyo is fairly good.
So because I love the name of that tier, and I love the cultural significance of it, and I think it's brilliant what you did with it, and having a big backer, which is very traditional, and everything that it represents in Japan and all that stuff, because that is something that I think is paying a lot of respect to Japanese culture, and with this book in particular, I think it is necessary to do that.
Mm-hmm. So the thing on the daimyo tier, there's a lot of value in that, certainly for the backer. You'll find that there are a lot of Kickstarter campaigns that have tiers that are that high, and some that are even higher. I mean, I've actually seen Kickstarter campaigns that had tiers that were as high as $10,000 before, which is hard to wrap my head around. You know what I mean? Um, that said, I mean, for that $500 tier, we got for the daimyo, they get an original art page from the issue. The issue gets dedicated to them and the manner they choose, and then they work with me on the collaboration for the dedication haiku that goes on the interior back cover, and that stays. That dedication and that back haiku stay in all editions of the book, and so you'll actually see in the artist edition that we have the 3 haikus from the first 3 issues that have their own separate pages in the artist edition as well. To dress that up. And so, yeah, the artist edition is pretty special. We'll have a total of 4 of those by the time the series is done. This one is I believe this one comes in at 92 pages, if I'm not mistaken. And it's available in digital and in print. And I'm really looking forward to having those in hand. I'd like to get a pretty decent sized print run of those done because I think that's going to be something that people are going to want to have. That, for those of you who are watching who don't know what that is, the artist edition actually collects the hand inked, unlettered pages, original art pages that were done by Alexia Veldhausen prior to being colored. And so it basically collects this fantastic art. Give you an idea. I've got an example of that right here, where you have these fantastic pages that showcase her talent with a brush and ink, and it's just really something to see. But if you are, oh well, let me bring that up.
I figured since we're live on video, and I'm sorry for the people in podcasting, you can't see it, deal with the problem, but that's what it looks like.
I mean, it can be very hard to get original art pages for comics, especially ones early in the series. So I've been seeing original art pages from issue 1 of 47 Furious Tales go from anywhere from $250 to $450 a page, depending on the page, right? Book 2 was pretty much the same, about $250 to $400. But in the last few months, we've seen kind of this trend where original art pages for comics have been going up, and that same trend's been following 47.
It's a very interesting market, and I'm not an expert in it by any stretch of the imagination. I know very little about it, but I've been following it, and for whatever reason, and I actually don't know the reason, and I'm gonna I should interview somebody to actually talk about this because it'd be a fascinating discussion.
I would actually recommend talking to Jimmy Palmiotti about it. He has some very unique insights into that market. So if you get a chance, definitely talk to Jimmy about it.
Definitely, I'm going to be reaching out because this is something I know more about covers and all that stuff, and that both personal and because of my eBay business and some other stuff, and just what they go for. But yeah, it's really interesting. And then I don't have any original art yet, but it's cool. It's cool as fuck. So.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, it can be expensive, like we said. So collecting those pages into a book so that people can enjoy them, I think is very important. And that book is actually $15 in print through the Kickstarter campaign.
To even talk about that, because you mentioned something very interesting, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't want to be completely raked over coals on a Kickstarter. So the fact that not everybody can afford original art, not everybody wants to buy original art. But
Right.
somebody might say, "Hey, look, I want to enjoy this on how it was originally published," and the fact that you're even providing that is very cool. And even just the idea and even the foresight to say, hey, look, somebody can afford $15, $20 of a book. They might not be able to afford a $450 page.
Right,
And
exactly.
I think that's something that, is very generous in a lot of ways to even provide that opportunity.
Well, the other thing too is that when you have original art, you want someplace where you can display it. And so you kind of have to have some dedicated wall space to that. And that calls into question, what's the lighting like in that room? You need to keep it out of direct sunlight. There are some things you have to do to protect that just so it's not damaged. I mean, not just from an investment perspective, but also from perspective of preserving the beauty of the page. So, I mean, there is a lot that goes into it, you know. But I think that once you, especially with Alexia Veldhausen's art, once you've seen her original pages, there is a real beauty to the brushwork that I hope people get to enjoy as much as I do, because it's really something phenomenal to see.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and got a question that I think is interesting that I'm curious about it. And I don't know the full intention of this question, but is there a loss other than production costs in the art, time, and so on with a failed Kickstarter?
Yes, yeah, there's a loss in time, and then of course having to repeat the labor. And running a Kickstarter campaign is very, very labor intensive. For the issue 3 Kickstarter, I believe I had 35 or 36 interview appearances. Each one averaged about an hour. So if you consider that was basically time lost because we didn't fund, and then I came back on this one, I think I had 28 appearances. That's a lot of duplicated work. So just from the lost time perspective, it's very significant.
Hey, I appreciate you coming back on my show. You're always welcome.
I appreciate being here, but you understand what I'm saying, though. We duplicated work on this.
I tried to mix up the questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We haven't asked about OnlyFans once, and I appreciate that.
There's still time. There's still time.
Right. We can talk about Bitcoin too. But no, yes, there definitely an investment lost, and it was also problematic not just for me, but also for retailers who were really wanting book 3 on the shelf. Now, fortunately, they didn't have any financial loss on that, but then having to convey to customers that rather than getting it in October or November, it's going to be April. That's a sizable delay. Now, are there other companies that have delays like that? Yes, but have we had a delay like that for one of our titles before? Not after we've had so many on the shelf. So getting capital moving in a way that's approaching sustainability for production is a pretty big deal. And keep in mind that comic art is not inexpensive. When you go to create a comic, count on spending around ballpark around $5,000 per issue for art and lettering. Okay, now people are going to say, well, hey, your current Kickstarter is just over 5,000 right now, right? And so I've been reinvesting money that I net from sales into projects, not just this project, but also RPG projects and others, and then I'll recoup the money through subsequent sales, and we begin this dance all over again. So yeah, there's
So,
a
e-
significant labor on that.
even to go further, and I might dive a little bit into you, because you're not just doing 47 Furious Tales. I think people need to know that Sonoma Publishing does a lot of different books. You know, you got Reign of Ages, and you got a variety of other books. And I
Right.
think also one of the losses is that you're doing a Kickstarter either every 6 weeks or every other month. And
Every
if
other
you have a
month.
failed Kickstarter, that messes up
Breaks the whole
your
schedule.
schedule.
Breaks the whole schedule. Yeah. Because last year we were planning on starting with the every other month rotation. And so that campaign not funding really let the air out of the tires on that. And so we came back in January and we did Reign of Ages. And then we fulfilled Reign of Ages in February, lickety split. And then 47 Furious Tales. Alexia is actually still working to finish the book. It should be done middle of April. We're going to order from Mixam. We'll get the books in probably the third, maybe the fourth week of April, and then we'll ship everything out. And I mean, Reign of Ages had 200 plus backers, and I had everything packaged and shipped out over a 3-day weekend. So with that, with on the fourth day when everything went out to the post office. So we made our fulfillment deadline in spades, and we're going to do that again. Is just having her get it finished, get the lettering done by Brian, and everything's out the door. But yeah, as far as the loss on that, having a campaign fail is a huge gut punch, especially when you've got a demanding schedule. Like for this year, every other month we have a different title. So we've got Reign of Ages in January, we've got 47 Furious Tales this March, Necroholic issue 1 in May, fulfilling in June, and then we'll be coming back with Reign of Ages issue 2 either in June or July. It's going to come to a point where we're going to either have to shorten the campaign lengths to say like 3 weeks, or maybe eventually even to 2, um, or we're going to have to adapt to where we have multiple titles on one campaign. And the reason being is because we have other titles that are in development as well. I kind of like the idea of doing multiple titles on one campaign. And the reason I say that is because we can then consolidate shipping so that people really aren't spending as much on shipping and getting their books. And you see this a lot with Peter Simeti's Alterna Comics when they do their quarterly release. It makes good financial sense because if you can get
It's also the idea that when you preview order from a company like Midtown Comics, I get a monthly shipping, and it saves me a lot of money versus getting
yeah,
every Wednesday
yeah,
shipping out something. Zenoscope has a program called Zenoscope Black, where they consolidate shipping and they also have you pay a one-time shipping fee, and then it covers you for a year. Because the idea is that once you start eliminating shipping, if you could save me $10 here, I could put that
mhm.
$10 into your book. Or let's say I was going to spend that money anyway. Anytime you save me money, I think positively of you. You
Well,
know,
it's like this: if you're shipping 2 different books in the same package as opposed to 2 different packages, you're automatically saving your backer about $3 in postage. I mean, just like that, about postage and materials and everything. And if you get to where you're shipping 3 or 4 books, then you're saving incrementally more. So a good example for Reign of Ages, we had some backer tiers that had 6 books in them, right? And so shipping on that in a flat rate legal envelope was $8.10 in postage. Okay, so about $10 in shipping costs in total, which is what we were billing for that tier built into it for the shipping part of it. So if we translate that to say, hey, we've got 5 or 6 books coming out this quarter, and you're paying $10 in total for your shipping costs, as opposed to paying $6 5 times. You're looking at $10 in total shipping costs versus 30, and it's financially good for the backer. It's financially good for you, the creator. And it's more environmentally responsible, of course, because you have less waste. It's more sustainable. It's also quicker because packaging 100 packages with 5 or 6 books is a lot quicker than packaging 500 packages with 1 book apiece. So I mean, there's a lot to be said for that model. There really, really is, and I think that we're going to see more people adopting it as time goes on, with people who have multiple title lines in effect.
There's other business reasons as well for doing that, where both books carry each other and things like that, and you're getting more content out and things
Well,
of that.
yeah. When that happens, certainly. Like for my product lines, they don't really interact very much, except for Reign of Ages is of course set in the same setting as the Tarot Adventures for D&D Adventures. So with that, if we're packaging, you know, the Draw of Glenfollow, Comet over Echo Rock, Death Comes to Glenfollow, the Queen of Cups, and all that together in one 4-book package of RPG modules, along with 4 or 5, Reign of Ages comics, then I mean, yeah, you've got a lot of overlap. And I mean, just think about that for a second. Just the savings on that for your consumer are absolutely immense. I mean, you're talking about saving someone $50 in shipping costs by consolidating in one campaign and one item, making it together so that they can get it. And I mean, there's campaigns you can go to where you can't get a single issue floppy for $30. So being
We,
able
we,
to,
we all know those ones. We don't need
I
to
mean,
mention
and there's a reason for it too, is because the money has to be there. I'm not making fun of it. There's legitimate economic reasons for it. I just think that if possible, if you can get the prices down, to be more reasonable, I think that lets more people participate in your campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I get priced out at a certain point. And
Yeah, I get priced out of some too. There's some campaigns I really wanted to contribute to that I couldn't. And I'm gonna take just a moment. We just reached 170 backers on the Kickstarter campaign. Now, our record to date for a 47 Furious Tales title campaign is 172. So we're literally only 3 backers away from breaking our backer count record on 47 Furious Tales, and about 70 away from reaching the same level we did with Reign of Ages. So we've got 24, a little more than 24 hours.
I'm going to be pushing it out heavy in the next day all the way.
Yeah, I've got 3 shows I'm on tomorrow when we're closing, and that's a tight schedule right there, man. Like from 6:30 until midnight, till almost midnight, I'm on 3 different shows.
Well, I am happy that you're on my show, Close to the Wire, as always. And obviously, you're doing some amazing work, and there's some really good tiers here. I mean, obviously, you could get all 3 books, physical. You could get everything digital, digital catch up. There's this stuff out there, and that cover looks dope.
Well, this is actually a really big tier in itself, because this is not just the books, but also the big 11 by 17 art prints, and also the 5.5 by 8.5 art prints. And so if you actually picked those up at like a convention prices, that would actually be more along the lines of $300, as opposed to what we've done with the Kickstarter campaign. And again, we're able to leverage the fact that we're packaging and shipping them all together, and then also not having to charge full premium price on the art prints like you do when you're at cons to cover your table costs. So it's something we're pretty proud of. I don't know if anyone could really see that, but there's a lot. And one quick thing for anyone who's watching, the tiers on 47 Furious Tales campaign all include shipping within the United States and the territories. So if you are in the U.S. Virgin Islands, if you're in Puerto Rico or Guam, Alaska, Hawaii, it doesn't matter. Your shipping is already built into those tiers. And it is just what it says it is. So like literally for $25, you can get your digital rewards, as well as print copies of the Veldhausen covers for issues 1, 2, and 3, shipped directly to you.
And it's I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you do it.
I don't sleep much. That's how I do it. Except for tonight. So big apologies to everyone in the audience. I was actually really late because I forgot today was Tuesday. And so
it's all right. It's all right.
Andrew
I'll get
tapped
it.
me on the shoulder. He's like, "Hey man, you alive?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "Aren't we doing tonight?" I'm like, "Oh crap, excuse
And
me."
I was polite. I said, hey, if we need to
Yeah, you
reschedule.
were incredibly polite. I would have been irritated. I was, for some reason, I was still thinking it was Monday, because my days have been running together real hard with all the Kickstarter stuff and all the daily work stuff and single parent stuff.
You
And
you 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 have a phrase, and I'm utilizing it slightly. And you say, if there's one thing you could be in this world, be kind.
be kind.
And so I know what it's like to run around frantic, going ballistic, trying to get an extra $100, $200 in the last 48 hours of your Kickstarter, trying to make it work. I get it. I completely understand it. And I'm not saying I was Mr. Kickstarter, and there's a million things I would want to do better. And if I do come back and I haven't decided, I'm going to improve upon what I did. But I understand now what that's like. And I think
Mhm.
it's a very, and this sounds weird, but I think it's an advantage to understand as an interviewer in my realm to know what it's like in the last 48 hours of your Kickstarter.
Very much so.
Because unless you've been there, I can't explain it. And if you're funded, you're like, cool, it's great. But you're also saying, are people going to drop out? And there's a lot of concern.
Mhm.
And that's something where I'm at. And so I completely understand what it's like. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, I
hey,
mean, we've had a total of 9 people drop, which is usually about our usual ratio for this number of backers. And hopefully we won't have any more drop in the next 24, although historically speaking, probably about 3 more. Which, for anyone who's watching this is a backer, we're not meaning you. You stay on the backer list, please. We want to get you your bucks. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you have to accept about Kickstarter, because it really isn't a store. And then in some other aspects, it is. It kind of depends on your perception building your own reality. You can say, okay, Kickstarter is a store for high-end boutique items, and that's true. But it's also true that Kickstarter isn't a store, and that it's a way to secure capital to, fund a project, and that's the big issue. Yeah. And then for some people, Kickstarter is their livelihood. It's where they make the bulk of their money. And then for other people like me, I actually don't make the money on the Kickstarter. I make the money off of the subsequent sales thereafter. And I know everyone, these are 47 Furious Sales issue 1, issue 2, and that really small pile over there is what's left of Rainy of Ages, which is made possible by the Kickstarter campaigns, getting actual press runs done. Print 3,000 or more copies and then get them out into people's hands. And it makes a huge difference as to what we can do with regard to putting it on people's shelves.
yeah, no, I agree. It's very interesting, and it does make a huge difference in so many ways. And I mean, you could teach a master class on this very easily.
Well, let me sell out a couple more times before I start talking about that. 47 Furious Sales issue 1 in print has sold a little over 2,000 copies to date, which I think is a pretty good start. When you compare it to other titles in the comic industry, I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket. Now, granted, these are all direct distribution, either direct to the consumer or direct to the retailer. So that's a lot in that concept, I guess. But I mean, look at what Brian Pulido does. He's moved well over 2,000 copies of Lady Death with his current campaign just through his Kickstarter. I mean, and once those go to like mass distribution, he'll tack on another 50,000 copies of Lady Death very easily. And you really want to get to that level of scale. Another good example, when you think about it, is the fact that that big scale, you get smaller cost of your printing, you get more readers, and even if you're only making 25 cents a book, I mean, some of the books out there are selling numbers that you would be really surprised about. I mean, a lot of people like to point to Demon Slayer for that, which is kind of like in a league all of its own here lately. I mean, well, I guess you could argue that One Piece is in the same league. One Piece is sold so
One
much.
Piece, My Hero, those are the big
Yeah,
ones.
My Hero is actually pretty far behind One Piece and Demon Slayer, but I mean it's a lot. It does really well on merchandise. But I'll tell you, there's a recent anime that came out this season that really surprised me when I looked into the numbers, and that was an anime called My Dress Up Darling, which is based on a manga by the same. And that came out in 2020. Would you care to guess how many copies My Dress Up Darling has sold in its 4 volumes?
I'm gonna take a random shot and an expensive shot. 25 million.
5.5 million in just 2 years across only 4 volumes. 5.5 million copies, and we're just talking print sales. And that's with something that just now had its anime come out this season. If you go to try and buy that manga right now in those volume collections, you actually can only, on like Amazon, you can't get issue 1 and 2 in print right now. It's not available. It's only available on Kindle. But if you try and buy it from the secondary market, those manga, which are normally like I think $12, are $99 and up on the secondary market. And it will fizzle out soon, because I can tell you that I myself am not spending $99 for a $12 manga. I'm just not going to do it. But the idea that something could sell 5.5 million copies in 24 months. And I mean, literally, this is the 24th month because it came out in April of 2020. So I mean, if you really just think about the scale of that, I mean, I'm actually playing with my calculator on it. That's 229,000 copies a month,
Yep.
which
It's a
means
lot.
it outsells the top 4 titles from DC combined.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of companies that are happy about that, like Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all those companies.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble would be much happier if they could get more copies, and they'll be much happier when they get off the ship and they can start selling more. But yeah, right now, yeah, I mean, imagine you're the manga creator and you're making, 25 25 cents per sale, right? Or 20 cents per sale.
There's a great saying: "They're happier than a pig rolling in shit."
Yeah, but you don't want to phrase it like that to Japanese creators. It doesn't come out so well. There's a number of other ways you can say that better to Japanese creators. I would not. I think that could be very easily construed to be a very dire insult. So I would not do that if I were you. They are they
Not
are
ceremony and sake.
yeah. All is not ceremony and sake. Life of the samurai is full of blood and death. Big stress on the death. 47 Furious Tales. Sorry, I got sidetracked. But yeah, I
It's all
mean,
right. It's all right.
the,
I do want to just mention one
this
more
kind
thing
of thing
about
is like the goal, is what I'm trying to get at. This is the kind of thing that we should be shooting for. We should be shooting to make our products affordable, accessible, and put up these kind of numbers, not just in the US, but in foreign markets as well.
and I also I think that, and I think 15 years ago this was a lot harder than it is today. And I'm
Oh,
not
hands
saying
down.
it's easy. This
Hands
is
down.
this is not easy. I'm not discounting anything, but even this interview thing, this wasn't available 15 years ago
Right.
to do, because I'm in Connecticut, you're in Kentucky.
Exactly.
This wasn't available, and I mean technically it was, but it was very expensive.
It was very difficult. You could have done it through Skype and recorded it and then put it up in the early versions of YouTube, but being doing your own creations, whether it's writing novels, novellas, light novels, comics, role-playing games, anything in the publishing sphere for books, literature, comics, things like that, is hands down far easier than it ever has been before in recorded
And
history of
cheaper
humanity.
and cheaper.
And cheaper. But now here's the catch for it. There's so much of it that you then have to turn around and say, well, how do I market myself to put this in front of people? And so the thing that you obviously want is you want to put it in front of people who are going to buy it and enjoy it. And then if you whenever you're creating something, before you put it out, you want to focus and make it the absolute best quality you know how. because that's one, that's the best you can only ever do, is your best, and then two, because you want people to get the best experience you can. So if you a good example of this is Jim Butcher with the Dresden Files. The first Dresden File novel was a really good book. The second Dresden File novel was a pretty good book too. The third Dresden File book was better than the first two. But here's the thing. If you look at the quality of the writing, Jim Butcher's writing quality continued to increase, and then he got to the book Changes. And the book Changes by Jim Butcher in the Dresden Files series is heart-wrenching. It is stellar. It is the culmination of so many story arcs. And then he stayed at that level of quality through each of the series. Now there's a couple of books after Changes that maybe people don't like as much. Changes is kind of a high point in the storyline for a lot of people. But that having been said, as a writer, when you look at the quality of his work has never dipped below that level of proficiency. Not in the Dresden Files, not in the Furies of Calderon. He basically honed his craft, worked his way through the levels, leveled up book after book after book. And then his publishers were good at their marketing, and they made good deals with the Dresden File card game and with the Dresden Files role-playing game, and created this fantastic thing. Now, if Jim will get his next book out, he'll sell another 1.5 million copies in a week, just like he did with Battlefield or Battlefront, whatever it was called, Battlegrounds, Battleground. And I think part of that can be owed to the fact that his proficiency has increased, which again goes back to the quality we're talking about. And anyone out there who's watching this, if you devote enough time and energy to working on your craft, you can write at that level of proficiency eventually. I mean, I don't write at that level of proficiency. I'm trying really hard to get there. It's going to be probably 6 or 7 years of hard struggle, lots of edits and rewrites.
I mean, I can add to that on my level where I feel like I'm just becoming good as an interviewer, and I've been doing this for 10 years. Not great. I legitimately feel like I'm average at this point, and that's 10 years in. It's going to be another 5 to 6 years for me to go to the next level. And
I'd say listen to Pete and Larry and Max and the usual suspects who give you honest, constructive criticism and implement suggestions. And go back and watch a lot of Dan Rather.
No. The reason why I bring this up is that I feel that, obviously, and look, I'm putting in the work, and in the next 8 months, the goal is to put in work, and I'm going to take some aspects that I think are correct and adjust, and then listen to other people, and then figure out the path I want to go down. But the point is that it takes years. You don't just master a craft. And I'm not a great writer by any stretch of the imagination. But again, it takes years to get that good.
I mean, I know I've got most of a decade ahead of me to come anywhere close to where Butcher was in, say, Summer Night, I mean, years, at least 7 or 8 years to get to that level of proficiency.
And look, every once in a while you get lucky and you're right at a higher level than you should be. Or I do an interview where I'm playing in a little bit of a bigger sandbox. But again, I got at least another 10 years before I can even consider myself, to be at the next level, I feel. And then maybe I'll get there in 9.
And
that should be a goal.
And I think one thing too that we as creators, particularly in comics, is that we have to acknowledge that there are things that are working and there are things that are not. And so we need to look at what's working while we hone our craft. Chainsaw Man, for example, see what's working for folks And I'm not talking about copying storylines and taking. I mean, certainly you can get inspiration, but I'm talking about more. Why is it that certain titles are really taking off? You know, what is it that strikes to the collective consciousness that has hundreds of thousands of people buying volumes? You know, um, or in many cases millions. It's a profound thing to think about. You know, when I look at all the work that went into selling 2,000 print copies of issue one, to realize that, you know, next month when a new collection comes out from a title that's been moderately well received on Shonen Jump, and they're going to sell 100,000 copies pretty easily just in Japan. You know, that has to make you stand up and say, okay, how do I get to this level? How do I put the books in places where people can buy it? How do I make it affordable? How do I keep my writing elevated and my production on point so that it's something people want to buy in the first place? These are all things that we need to look at, especially if we're going to try and make our labors of love into the labor that actually pays for our lives, pays our lifestyles and whatnot.
Or even if it just sustains your labor of love before it even pays for
Right.
lifestyle. I mean, I think that's the first goal, right? My first goal with this show is not to make me millions of dollars. It's to be self-sufficient.
Right. I mean, I think you can argue that they're getting to be self-sufficient is a lot easier with crowdfunding assistance because you can utilize that for like the printing and production costs. If with comics, if you are yourself an artist and the writer on your creation, you have a huge amount of advantage over the folks who do not draw their own work. Because
Yeah,
whereas you can take the time and create your work. Tyler Carpenter is a good example of this. Tyler
yeah.
takes the time, creates his own, and he's not worried about having to pay an artist a page rate because he took the time and taught himself how to draw, um, which I think is pretty admirable.
I'll give you another example. Um, I don't know if you know Livid Comics by any chance.
If I know what.
A Livid Comics, Livid Comics.
What's the title they put out?
They put out Deadpool and Yule. So they have two titles. And
I don't
basically
think I know that one.
what they did is that this is sort of, I guess, a hybrid. It's not where one of them's the writer and one of them's the artist, but they're
Mhm.
both co-owners. So they're not taking a money, you're not paying your artist, but both people own equity and they own a 50-50 equity split versus a
Right.
page rate, which is another way around a problem. But that's a whole different ball game on
You
how you
see,
set things up.
Nick Capone and I have done that with Reign of Ages. I mean, I own the trademark on the setting because I've owned the trademark for a couple of years, um, and we're just leveraging the setting because it's something that we can do and it helps for the storyline. But by the same token, with that, um, our particular arrangement is such that we make sure that Nick is very well compensated, and of course, one of the things that has proven itself already is that there's more money in getting a sizable print run and then selling those off than there is in just taking the money that you would use to print. And it's actually by a factor of four at least, right? So when you have like a $5,000 Kickstarter campaign and you produce $20,000 worth of merchandise from that $5,000 Kickstarter campaign, that's a huge deal, you know.
I know all about that, in which that I took that straight out
I,
of you.
I'll see your metal card and raise you a bunch of comics.
No, but I think the idea is that there was a reason why me and my partner DJ, who's on this metal card, have an equity arrangement because he and I both saw that there was more money, not in me paying him 150 bucks, but in him getting 60 metal cards that are worth 10 bucks a pop. So it's a
Yeah.
factor of four. where he's going to be at Wizard World and he's going to sell out all those metal cards. Yeah. And if he doesn't sell out of all of them at Wizard World, he'll sell out of them. He's going to 2 more cons this year. He's going to be out of metal cards, and he might even buy my metal cards off of me. So he might buy my shares if it's profitable, and I'll make a little bit less money. But at the end of the day, we're going to be coming back, and we're going to be doing more metal cards. Because as long as he's selling them and I'm selling them and I'm getting, it makes sense because there's more money in that stuff. I mean, my metal cards, I have like 45 of them. That's $450. That is over. That's pretty much half my Kickstarter money that I raised on Kickstarter, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge deal.
And $450 to you might not seem like a lot of money to me.
No, $450 is a lot of money to me. You don't think that for a minute, because $450 for me, I can get a page of. That's a big deal for me.
For me, that's a podcast and StreamYard covered, where that keeps my podcast position on SoundCloud and covers StreamYard, which covers like 60% of my expenditure.
Well, $450 would basically cover. For some of my artists, it would cover a cover for a comic. For some of the artists, it would.
I know. It would cover. I know certain artists it would cover a cover and then some. So but for me, it sounds crazy, and I'm not trying to. Some people might look at $450. That's nothing. I mean, what my metal cards are going to sell for. I mean, what I'm going to pull out in the next 18 months on them. It's a huge deal for me, and so. And I know it sounds weird, it sounds corny and everything, but again, this is not the damn.
Well, Bitcoin sounded funny too.
That is true. Ethereum sounded funny. Algorand sounded funny. Mm-hmm. But Algorand at 11 cents. So, but I digress. I do want to mention this one really quickly. Because that could be added on, everybody, and that's an awesome.
That's our first stretch goal we unlocked, which is a variant cover by Paul Walcott, and those are $5, which you can add on to any tier that already has print copies coming, and we do tack on an extra $1 to help cover the shipping, the postage actually for the shipping, which is again us leveraging. The whole thing about shipping books together and the small difference in the postage costs. So, and of course, everything ships bagged and boarded in Gemini mailer. Get that out. And then we actually reached our second stretch goal. So we're going to be having a backer-only Q&A. I've got to talk to a couple people on how we're going to facilitate that. I've got one individual telling me we could do it through Twitch, which I think is an interesting option. And another saying that the best option would probably be through Discord. So we're going to look at that and get that set up, and we'll do a backer-only thing, Q&A with myself and Alexia to get things done, and get closer to our audience.
Yeah, no, it's very, very important, and obviously you got a lot going on, and we covered a lot of things today. Lot of things. I actually took the time and tried to mix questions up because I think anybody can go check out the last interview, and we dove really into 47 Furious Tales issue 3. And I think did I interview you for 1 or did I interview you for 2?
For 2. Yeah, for 2.
Okay, I'm making sure every day feels like the same.
And also for Reign of Ages, and also for Dungeons and Dames.
Did I interview you for Dungeons and Dames?
Yep, we did Dungeons and Dames.
I don't think we did that book.
We did Dungeons and Dames.
I don't think so. I don't remember this. This is a problem.
I think you were drinking that night too, though.
No. I didn't interview you for it.
Yeah.
I might have been on it, but I didn't interview you.
No, you interviewed me for Dungeons and Dames.
I don't know if you're messing with me now.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm never wrong. I am occasionally mistaken.
I thought we did issues 2 of 47 Furious Tales, and then
We
we
did
did
issue
issue
2 of
3,
47, then we did issue 3 for the first campaign.
and then we did
And
Rayne, and then this is the 4th.
yeah, I think we've done 5 though. I think we did Dungeons and Names too. But if not, then I can be mistaken, I suppose. But I can't
No,
be
no, no,
wrong.
no. I'm like I'm now questioning myself here. Like, this is really not a good position. Like, I understand I have problems, but I don't think I have this big of a problem. Like,
Well, you know,
but
it happens to all of us sometimes, right?
I mean, if I could do interviews in my sleep and not remember it, I mean, this is a whole new market for me.
There you go.
I mean, the possibilities here. You know, if I could sneak an extra interview in at like 4 in the morning and not remember it and pretend and feel like I was sleeping, I mean, this is a whole new market. I could kick up my interview things from 6 to 7 a week. I mean, this is an extra 52 interviews a year here. So clearly, I'm gonna have to look into this now. But anyway, I don't want to keep you here all night. I know you got a crazy day tomorrow doing 3 interviews.
3 interviews, full-time day job, single dad. I've got to post an update tonight. So somewhere along the line, I need to get some sleep, take out the trash. You know.
So
Usual stuff.
obviously, where can people support this? Where can people check it out? Where can people bother you on social media?
Sure
Where
thing.
can people all the stuff? You know the drill.
Yep. So you can support 47 Furious Tales on Kickstarter. It is going to be ending March 30th, 11 p.m. I think Eastern time. Actually, I can look that up now. Hold a second. It is actually ending 11:59 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So definitely get out there and pledge that. We are 3 backers away from a new record number of backers for 47 Furious Tales. So that's a good way to start. You can also find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Sinopa Publishing. And then also on Facebook, we have our Sinopa Publishing page there. I'm also on Facebook as William Samuel Quinton, which is my real big boy name. And then I'm forgetting where else. On Pinterest, as Sinopa Publishing. And then on I just completely drew a blank. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, I think that's it.
Where can people find you? If they type in Sinopa Publishing, they're going to
Sinopa
find
Publishing. Yeah, Sinopa Publishing, they're going to find us. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Kickstarter. Kickstarter, we have a Sinopa Publishing Kickstarter account as well, where we do our role-playing game stuff now. And then the WS Quinton account, which is my personal account, where we do our comics.
And obviously, I'm going to keep saying.
And on Indiegogo. Indiegogo.
Is that it?
Yeah,
drive through as well.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's true. Our main storefront. Drive through comics and drive through RPG. Good save, Andrew. There you go. There you go. You can knock off 5% of that Bitcoin. Knock 5% off that Bitcoin, man. Yeah, drive through RPG, drive through comics. That's where our primary sales are through right now. And drive through has been really good for us, both on comics and on RPGs. The one thing that's nice about that is you can automatically set your royalties for your contributors in there as well. So if you have a royalty arrangement of some kind with the contracts you signed with your contributors, you can lock those in there automatically, and it automatically disperses per sale. So that's pretty handy. Makes bookkeeping a breeze. And then, of course, it's also good for digital fulfillment on crowdfunding rewards, because you can literally import the list of people getting particular rewards and then trigger them all at once. It will actually load those digital rewards into their libraries as they claim them. And so if they ever happen to have a hard drive fail or otherwise, lose the device that the PDF or whatever format you have is on, well, they can just go right back to drive-through and download it again, because it'll stay in their library.
And then obviously, I'm going to keep saying it, is you got to support indie comics and indie content creators. Sam is not Marvel, he's not DC, he's not Image. And every dollar that is pledged on the Kickstarter And even if you pick up the book, whether that's at a con or off of a store or anything like that, goes right back into making the book, keeping the lights on so the book can be made. Maybe, going and getting Sam a six pack or getting Sam his first Bitcoin. We don't know yet.
Well, my
Um,
first Bitcoin is coming from Andrew. We know that. Maybe my second Bitcoin eventually, but actually, yeah, everything gets reinvested back into the company right now as we're growing the catalog, increasing production, and trying to get to scale where we can hopefully eventually get into comic shops in every state in the United States, and start our foreign distribution. I'd like to actually get into Japan with 47 once 47 Furious Tales is done. And we've actually already found two candidates for our English to Japanese translating letterers. So that's one big thing done.
and I'm gonna just keep saying it, and I'm gonna just reiterate a little bit. Um, you really got to support indie because it is necessary, and it's if you like these books, you have to put your money where these books are being produced, and it's not rocket science. And obviously, Sam's got a Kickstarter going on, and it's ending in 24 hours. So that's one of the things is that even if you're throwing just a digital tier, it goes a long way, and it does make a huge difference. And then, when number four comes out, if you really like number three or you like one through three and you're a little uncertain, you bought the digital, you can get the physicals, or you can pick up the physicals after the Kickstarter. Because they're going to be all over comic shops, and I'm sure that if you look hard enough, you can find somebody who will happily send you those books. Um, excuse me. Um, Furthermore, I get it. Money's tight. Everybody's been there. People are funding stuff. Everybody has money at different times in their life, different times of the year. Sharing it out is free.
Mm-hmm.
So sending out a tweet, sharing it on Facebook, Instagram stories, all that stuff is free, and that also goes a long way and it actually means something.
And
If you
we
shoot,
do have digital options too that'll make things very very affordable. Issues 1 through 3 are only $6 total, or you can get the deluxe digital, which is $10, and you get all three, and then also get the artist edition, so you get to enjoy that fabulous original artwork as well. We really want to make sure that we make things as affordable as possible for everyone, because that's the only way we can get our hands in, to get our books into everyone's hands, rather, is if we can truly make it affordable for everyone.
and so that's something that I think is very important. And if you do back it and you back it digital, please share it out that you backed it because it actually does mean something. When you back something, sharing it out makes a huge difference in that regard. So go do that. Again, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's all free. It doesn't cost you a penny to share it out, and it could make the difference of somebody having an extra $10 in their campaign.
Mhm.
So I really do encourage everybody to share it out. As far as I'm concerned, I appreciate people sharing out this interview. It goes a long way in my world, whether you're sharing it out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, means a lot to me. Obviously, on Pop Anime Comics on all social media. You could hit me up there. Also, I have this metal card that's up on my eBay store. I also have the T-shirt. I got Buy Me a Coffee if you would like to buy me a coffee like what we're doing here. And I got a bunch of other things that are going on. If you're interested in guesting on my show, you can shoot me a DM. And if I like your project and it looks cool, I do take, I guess, submissions for lack of a better word, but I am very selective. But, everybody's free to say, hey, I got a project going on. Are you interested? I'm more than happy to take a look at it. And then if I find it interesting, we could work from there. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
The final word is everyone. I know the world is tough on us all right now. There is certainly a lot going on, but just please do remember that in a world where you can be anything, please choose to be kind.
Yeah, and I'm stealing that. So I believe in Sam and everybody. That is a wrap.